Hey there, folks. This is Dan Fritter from Calgary Magazine, and after what seems like a decade of dark days, we can finally say, somewhat comfortingly, that we are at least at the beginning of the end. This morning, Justin Trudeau announced his resignation as the leader of the Liberal Party. He does remain as the Prime Minister, unfortunately. However, he also announced the prorogation of government until March 24th, meaning that instead of reconvening on the 27th of January as intended, the House of Commons and all the various committees associated with government will basically stay in sleep mode until the last week of March. This is likely due to some funding stuff and whatnot that the government needs to pass. Otherwise, the government runs out of money on March 31st, but that's a different matter. Also, Jagmeet Singh came out with a statement in response to this, saying that he will vote against the speech from the throne, which is a confidence motion. For those unfamiliar, prorogation ends one parliamentary session and begins another, and when a parliamentary session begins, it requires that the government deliver to the Governor General effectively a letter stipulating what their agenda is, their priorities, and what they intend to do. The Governor General reads this into the Senate. That is the speech from the throne. And in response, the House of Commons has a vote whether or not to accept or reject this agenda, basically. So by saying that they will reject the agenda, the Governor General will then be forced to dissolve government, and we will go to an election, which, if that occurs on the 23rd or 24th of March, rather, we will likely have an election sometime in early May, which is good news for gun owners. Now, in addition to that, there's a lot of questions I've seen online about OICs. As gun owners, obviously, we were told there was going to be a ban in February coming with another OIC. And in short, there's been a lot of confusion about whether or not a government that has prorogued can pass an OIC. The answer is sort of maybe. I wish I could be more clear than that. The thing is that an OIC, as it progresses through government before introduction, requires the approval of the Treasury Board, which is itself a cabinet committee. Committees are all prevented from transacting business during a period of prorogation, so unless the committee had already provided approval for the OIC we expect in February before the Christmas break began, then they cannot get the appropriate approvals to bring this OIC into place in February while the government is prorogued. Now, if they did get that approval prior to the Christmas break beginning, then yes, unfortunately, there is nothing after the Treasury Board approval stage that would be impacted by a prorogation. So if they got the appropriate approvals, we could see that in February. However, I feel like this is somewhat unlikely, and this is me speculating, so don't take this as gospel, but it feels unlikely given we saw we saw an OIC banning guns literally weeks before the Christmas break began. And it seems odd to me that the government would have an OIC ready for December 5th, but also have an OIC ready 2 weeks later for February. That would be an odd timeline for me, but there could have been political motivations behind it. They may have prepared this in stages. Who knows? Unfortunately, we cannot find out, so we'll all have to wait and see. That said, like I said, with that news that Jagmeet Singh is intending to bring the government down towards the end of March, it may all be a moot point. Now, the second thing I want to address is there's obviously lots of people that would say, well, yeah, you're taking Jagmeet at his word. That's a bold move, to which I would certainly say I agree. However, I think we can also all agree that Jagmeet Singh, historically speaking, has made decisions that are in his own interest. The pension obviously comes to mind, which, to be clear, he can bring the government down at the end of March. He still gets his pension. It matures, I believe, mid-February, so that's off the table. Or I suppose it's rather on his table, but it's off the table as a decision-making input. And in terms of political benefits, there are many to him bringing the government down immediately, and most of them have to do with leadership elections, options for the Liberals to replace Justin Trudeau. So for those that are unfamiliar, typically when a leader resigns, that prime minister stays on as the party selects their new leader. In the case of the Liberal Party, that can occur in two ways. They can either have a conventional election, wherein all card-carrying members of the Liberal Party, your neighbor down the street, your average person, caucus members, obviously, everyone votes on who their favorite candidate is. People will be familiar with this from the Conservative Party because they've had so many elections in the past few years. But there is also a second option, which is a bit more truncated, and that is where the national executive for the Liberal Party can actually empower caucus, so sitting Liberal MPs only, to select their next leader from the caucus. They may or may not do either one, and with Jagmeet threatening to bring the government down at the end of March, he is sort of steering them towards the latter option, largely because historically speaking, Liberal leadership elections have been mandated to take over 90 days. However, there's an asterisk on that because the national executive can shorten that period as needed, so it's somewhat fluid. So if you see people saying, oh, they can't do it because they need 90 days, they can change that as needed. However, historically speaking, going back to 1984, there has not been a Liberal leadership election that has taken less than 108 days, with most of them being more in the realm of 300 or 400 days. Their races are years long between when someone says they're going to resign and them selecting a new leader. So this is sort of, if anything, this is Jagmeet steering them towards making a caucus selection. But regardless of if that's what he is actually doing, there are some other benefits to him in this regard. Primarily is a significant reduction in opportunities for the Liberals to fundraise. Leadership elections are where parties make a metric ton of money, because obviously when you have a party, it's a relatively monolithic thing with one leader that represents one individual sort of aspect of that monolith. That all gets upset when you have a leadership election, when you've got 4, or in the Conservative Party's case, in one recent one, like 14 people on the stage. There are it's a much broader population that see themselves reflected in any one of those candidates, and that attracts money that would otherwise likely not be available. For example, I think we can all remember Kelly Leach, Maxime Bernier, Andrew Scheer. These are very different people offering very different things to a big tent Conservative Party, all of which involved those candidates pulling members and money into the party. It created a massive amount of funding. The very existence of the People's Party of Canada with Maxime Bernier is evidence of this, that process of leadership adds a lot of profile, brings a lot of money, brings a lot of new members in. By truncating the Liberals' options for that at, effectively 3 months or less with the March 24th deadline, he's limiting their ability to do so in a really significant way. The second thing is polling bumps. So typically with leadership races, parties will see a bump in the polls because, again, people will see more of what they want reflected. And as the race congeals around an individual candidate or a couple favorites, those favorites will absorb the most well-liked policies and proposals of their competition. And in doing so, they'll make that party more appealing to a broader amount of people. Again, by limiting that option and making it much shorter, Jagmeet Singh is really limiting their ability to do so, which is especially effective given prorogation never helps any political party in the polls. The second you prorogue, you start to lose people in the polling because obviously as taxpayers, we all want to see our government working for us, and prorogation brings that to a screeching halt. So I think in the coming days, you'll see the Liberal Party's polls continue to drop, and I suspect that where they are currently at will not be recovered by the time they select a new leader because, again, those truncated timelines that is being forced upon them by Jagmeet Singh will significantly reduce any upside to this whole leadership contest that they may have, whatever form it takes. So it's a very smart move for Jagmeet Singh. Likely, not even likely, it is the best move that Jagmeet Singh can possibly make, is to bring this government down ASAP, because he will either get to contest this election against Justin Trudeau, which I'm sure is what he would like to do, or someone that is not Justin Trudeau but does not have the name recognition that he does, was selected in a very fast and rushed manner. So either way, it's looking good for them, and that's why I think that perhaps he's being, I almost struggle to say it, I think he might actually be honest this time, and he might be believable when he says he's going to do so. So like I said, that's good news. Don't know about the OIC stuff. We'll find out in February, but ultimately with what seems to be a spring election on the horizon, there's some degree of, does it even matter anymore? Because if this government comes down, the next one is going to have to deal with these OICs. As I've stated in previous videos, these are very expensive processes. The buyback amnesty ends in October. It looks like we will have a new government probably well established long before that occurs, which gives me some faith that we might actually see these OICs overturned rather than the amnesty extended to provide them time to do so. So it's all good news for gun owners. And like I said, we are likely looking at, if it's nothing else, it is the beginning of the end of one of the worst governments for Canadian gun owners in history, if not the worst. So it's a pretty good day for us, and it is an awesome to do a happy video for a change. So thank you for watching. If you like this stuff, always like, comment, subscribe, and I will absolutely be in the comments down below today because this is pretty breaking news, and if there's any updates, I will try and update the space as needed. But again, thank you for watching, and a little bit of a smile on my face today. So I think everyone deserves it. We're getting through it, guys. So Have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.